Hi everybody, I'm Kathy Hester. Welcome to my kitchen. We are going to do something super cool with this Miomat. So there's already been a video where I cleaned it and kind of unboxed it and we talked a little bit about it. I did a demo at the Georgia Veg Fest with it and I was super impressed, and honestly I've been using it a lot. So this is different than the Nutter or the Archmira, in that those are for smaller amounts, like 1.5 to 2 cups, and this is for more half-gallon-y. I'm sure it's measured in milliliters, but it's thereabouts. So this is more in line with the Almond Cow, Soy Joya, Soy Bella, and it has a heating element. So the difference between all of those, and we're going to go over most of them, is the Almond Cow doesn't have a heating element. So what that means is things like it can't do soups, which you may not be looking to do, but it means it can't do soy milk or maybe some other things that require some heat. When I talk to the Miomat people, they're super sweet, and they saw my video and I said everybody wants Oatly, but making homemade milk isn't exactly like Oatly. And we talked about the enzyme, and I think it's called amylase. I think it's amylase. And I read a really interesting post on Miomat's Facebook recipe group that they pointed me to. So they were saying that they came up with a recipe that's like Oatly. Now first I want to say that it does use maple syrup and it does use a little bit of coconut oil. I'm going to do it today as is, and if it works well, then I'll look to see if I can find an oil-free way to do this as well. But I wanted to start with their recipe. So what they were saying is the enzyme, we know, kind of sort of does something to the oats to make them less slimy. And that's super cool, but it also creates sugar, they said. And that's why we're putting in some maple syrup. So even though it has 0 added sugars, that process is said by Miomat to produce sugars. I haven't done any further research, so if you guys know anything about that, let me know, okay? So I have a cord over here, and usually what I do is put everything in the Miomat or any milk maker that I'm using first. Can you guys see those little measurements? In pretty much every milk maker, there's like a minimum and a maximum, and that's what it is. So it needs to be in between these. So instead of just filling it up with water first, I'm going to put in my 1 cup of oats. These are rolled oats, and in fact, these are some fancy rolled oats I got from Costco that I'm really liking. And let me show you. These Farmers We Know, and it's sprouted, and they are also gluten-free, which is super awesome for me and maybe for you. Okay, so we've got that in. We've got 1 teaspoon of coconut oil, and again, for those of you who are oil-free, if this seems very Oatly-like, I'm going to see what we can do to make an oil-free version. There is some no added oil Oatly and some that's not. And they were saying 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. And we're going to start with that because I want to see what this recipe is like. Again, even though Oatly says it has no added sugar, the enzyme is supposed to create some of that. Okay. And I'm going to use my little spatula to get all that in there. And then all we're going to do, you could also put a pinch of salt in there. A lot of people do that. It kind of makes it taste a little sweeter, but you don't have to. And I am going to pour in water to the 1,300 milliliter mark, hopefully. Or I'll be, yeah, there we go, I have enough water. So at the max line. And you can see this has a little thing, kind of like, and this is where that goes into. Another thing about the Miomat that's different than some, it's like the Soy Joya in that it has this removable cylinder. And basically it seems like we keep it off for soups, smoothies, things like that. We keep it on for milks. And the setting that they've asked us to use for this particular one is a little bit different. So the raw milk actually does heat it up a little bit. So with oats, the more that you heat it up, the more problematic, meaning the slimier it can get. So what they were saying was to use the smoothie setting with the cylinder. So I'm going to hit the select button until it goes to smoothie, which is hard to see under all this light. One more. So I don't know if you can you get, yeah, you can sort of see it there. And then I'm going to press start. Okay. And you can kind of hear it start to go. I don't know how many minutes this cycle is going to be. If it's long, we're going to just kind of cut it. So you don't have to sit here and listen to this the whole time. But usually in most of these machines, it starts and then it stops. It starts and then it stops. It's very much like when you're making milk in your Vitamix. So you want to kind of start to break up those almonds or soaked almonds or cashews, let them get a little softer. Especially in any warm cycles, you're going to notice that more. And that goes with the Archmira, the Nutter, all the different ones. So the reason that they're going on the smoothie cycle is, again, so as not to heat up the oats. And the warm probably goes about 12 to 15 minutes. It'll be interesting to see how long the smoothie cycle goes. And there are recipes on Miomat's site, as well as in the booklet that comes with the Miomat. They sent me this one. I bought the almond cow. I'm getting a couple of different milk makers, like directly from China, like through Temu and a few other places, just to kind of give it a little overview and see what we can get out there. I did try one that looks like the Nutter that I would not recommend, so we're not going to do that. You're not going to see that one. And Nutter has just contacted me again, so it looks like we may be getting a replacement, so I'll let you know how that works and keep you updated. You can kind of hear that. And one of the things I like about the Miomat, even though it's not silent, which none of these can be, it's still fairly quiet. And I find that really nice. I find that with the Archmira as well is a little quieter than some of the other ones. Okay, and so it beeps like that when it's done. Okay, so I can press stop and I can take this lid off. So we can kind of look in here. So I definitely see a little bit of oat clumps, and that's okay. We're going to strain it. One of the things I do like is when I take this out, even though it's plugged in, I'm not getting an error or an error code. It just kind of knows. It looks nice and thick. I'm going to pull back just a wee bit. And I already have, this is like a double mesh, fine mesh strainer. And I prefer this actually I prefer this period, but especially doing oat milk, I feel like when you use a nut milk bag, you're really kind of squishing out a lot of that slime. I guess that's just really what I want to say. So when you're using a fine mesh strainer, what happens, you can see, is these little holes get stopped up by the fiber. So just take a really nice flexible spatula and move it around. It's no harder than a nut milk bag, and I find that it cleans up easier. Okay, and let me let you see the process too from the front. Just gonna pour the rest of this in here, and then I'll let me scrape some of this out too, because that'll make cleanup easier. Spatulas are your best friend in the kitchen, because the more we can just not have to clean and scrub and do all those things. And we're also going to use the cleaning cycle again on the Miomat. But so see how you can see it going through, and when I scrape that pulp, I would try oil-free. It's maybe aquafaba, some soaked chia seeds ground. I know some people use sunflower lecithin, and maybe we'll go through and try all those too and see if it compares. Now with this, with the leftovers, I probably could go ahead and add some extra flour, maybe some pumpkin or something, and make like a dog cookie. And so you can see it was a little bit slimy there at the end. And we'll see if I pushed it too far. But it looks really good, actually. So that looks nice. I'm going to taste some of it. Oh, wow. Okay, so why am I making this surprise face? I expected it to taste sweeter. It does not taste sweet. You're not really getting that maple flavor at all. It tastes like unsweetened oat milk that I bought at the store. Probably from the Amelie's, or however you say it. It doesn't feel oily, so usually if I add oil to something, I feel a little like, oh, because I don't eat a lot of oil, but you don't notice it at all. So if you are not 100% oil-free, this could be a workaround. Again, I'm going to try and find some workarounds. So let's see what it looks like when I'm pouring it in here. And so we can just kind of get an idea of the viscosity. $10 word for the day. And I mean, it'll be interesting to see if it separates and things like that, but right now it looks great, like great. I'm going to take a different spatula and get the little bit out of here. Again, helps with cleaning and with no waste. That's about a teaspoon or two. No need to pour that down the drain when Oatly now costs, what, $5 for a half gallon? You guys, this looks fantastic. Now, again, I'll kind of report back on if it starts separating and how quickly it does that. Let me get this over here, and we'll go ahead and do a wash. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a teaspoon of detergent and fill up the water. And then I'll show you that one more time. I know you've seen it before, but everybody may not have seen it because it was on a live. Also, while I'm filling up the water, I want to make sure to avoid where the plug-in is. And I'm also going to go ahead and rinse around the edges where I poured so that that all, gets kind of incorporated down here and I don't have to scrub later on. And I'm going to just go to about the minimum line. I have found that if you go past the minimum line on the cleaning cycles, a lot of times it can overflow. Also, notice on here, because I had that sitting there for a little while, it could get a little crusty, but I'm going to just put it in here, do the self-clean, which takes about 5 minutes, and then I will just go ahead and wash it in the sink. Again, being careful to miss those electrical connections. So I'm going to select. It's so funny to me that the overhead lights make it so hard. The last setting, cleaning, and we're going to start it. And so the reason I wanted to show you some of this too is if you've washed one of your milk makers using a cleansing cycle that they have and it's splashed out, chances are the water's too high, and just lower it some, because usually if we're making oat milk, cashew milk, almond milk, it has some fiber and some weight in there, which keeps it from splashing everywhere. With just water, it's more likely to splash all the way up to the top, creating a cleansing cycle, right? Okay, so it's beeping that it's done. So let's take a look so you can kind of see what this does. Come in a little bit more. And again, we just lift that off. Now, I still need to rinse this off really good. The other thing that I notice is that in here, things get caught, so make sure that you take this off to rinse it well. And I'll go ahead and do that. You can see that it's really pretty clean in there. So I'm just coming over to the sink. I'm rinsing. I'm not going to use the sponge or anything at this point, so you can kind of see. It might be a little more necessary since we used coconut oil to use the sponge on parts of it. So this is what happened with the rinse. And again, it's a little bit, I can tell I used coconut oil. And in here, again too, just because there's oil in there, but let me pour this out and you can see, I'm going to pour it out and just rinse, which is what I usually do on other cycles without oil. And it's pretty daggone clean. So kind of to get all this together, what I probably will do with this one that I haven't been doing with the oat cashew milks that I've been making in here, I've been using, it comes with a container, and I've been using a container of cashews and a container of oats and filled up the water to the top. It does separate. It comes together really quick when you shake it, and it's lasted longer than just regular oat milk tends to. I'm assuming too with the oil in here that's going to help it last a little bit longer as well as help it stay together. Adding a pinch of salt can also extend the life of your homemade plant-based milk. So stay tuned. We'll do more in the Miomat as well as other plant-based milk makers. I'll see you soon.